My God, this is almost over.
Yeah, looks like those planes are here to rescue us. Look, they're dropping us presents. Why are they exploding?
Old man's a football.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to part 3 of the Plants vs. Zombies Shadow Plants only playthrough. On our last episode, in order to make things more interesting, I ended up banning Moonflower outside of sun production missions and days where it's absolutely required. We additionally completed both the Wild West and Frostbite Caves, dealing with both weasel patches and barbecue chicken.
So please bring your fat asses over and gobble up all this barbecue chicken.
And we were ready to enter into one of the most helpful worlds, being that of the Lost City. Lost City is particularly good for challenge runs in Plants vs. Zombies 2, mainly because it's the only map that offers an alternative sun production on almost every day. This makes actually mustering up forces in order to defend against the latter waves of Lost City not necessarily a cakewalk, but significantly easier than pretty much every other world. And that's largely what we did, with these first several days offering no real challenge, though that certainly wouldn't be the case forever, as Lost City also has some pretty standard tanky zombies. Now, we also, of course, have both the shovel and umbrella zombies, but unsurprisingly, the shovels aren't that much worse than a conehead and are actually less of a threat than bucketheads. Reason being, for whatever reason, nightshades can actually hit them through their shovel. And since nightshades get recycled every 30 seconds, it doesn't really matter if they shovel them out of the way, which is a bit of a contrast considering Dustclobber's attacks are blocked by the umbrella zombie, and Nightshade's attacks still aren't. It's honestly surprising to me that Nightshade might end up as more of a carry to this series than the Dustclobber in the end. Things go on pretty standardly with my strategy just being to pop Nightshades on the tiles if they're further to the left, and Dustclobbers if they're further to the right, with me able to just mass enough Dustclobbers with the sun I'm getting to destroy most of the general horde before the day's even over. We also got a Shadow Peashooter for one world, and it was a welcome change of pace, but largely continuing on, we didn't really have any significant problems through the majority of the opening days. Day 12, we get to our first interesting day of a sun production wave, which would permit the use of a moonflower, but as I've figured out in my parasites, and also I think Summoners Only playthrough, it's 100% possible to get through this day without, and so I did, stalling the Gargs for the last part, and we were done using only the sun tiles, moving right along. Day 13 is a conveyor belt mission. Nocturne knows what you did that one night and they're not happy about it. Day 14, survive with the given plants. Nocturne may or may not be hunting you for what you did that night. Day 15, protect some Dustclobbers, but Gloomvine will be joining us for it, and combining Gloomvine and Dustclobber with a competent sun production day translates to total evisceration. Got it done, easy moving right along. Day 16 was the ultimate battle wave. Nocturne is rapidly approaching your location right now. Day 17 introduced the Tent Imp, who will set up zombie spawners on sun tiles. We were able to easily eviscerate them with our own Dustclobbers shotgun camping them, already on the sun tiles though, with Nightshades too. Now, these guys will be dangerous later on, especially considering they can make bucket heads, which is armor I can't competently pierce without Shadow Shroom currently, though that's something we largely won't have to worry about until the final days probably. Day 20 is the notorious Z Day.
What did you two do?
The day itself wasn't too bad, though I did have to fight the tent imps over the sun tiles. Day 21, pre-picked plants. Day 22, gimmick butt torture mission. And day 23, we get back to business, but it's monkey business, as Lost Temple reminds me of Bloons tower defense. Anyways, this is the first day we struggle with, as it introduces the Temple Explorer Indiana Jones wannabe zombies, who can take an obnoxious amount of abuse, and there's also gargantuars. But we largely got through it after the second try, even with the bullet sponges. The only problem is these guys can take even Rasputin levels of poison and continue moving on even from Shadow Shroom, so we have to often shoot them dead too. Day 24, don't let the zombies trample the flowers, but the flowers are far enough back in. Once again, I have ample backing from the sun tiles, so largely we're once again able to just first try it. Day 25, another most plants picked mission. Fortunately, only Nightshade and Shadow Shroom are all I need, and spamming them gets me across the finish line relatively easy. Day 26, we have only one sun tile hill, but it largely didn't matter in the end, and we bust right through it. Day 27, I did first try it, but I definitely cut it close with all these damn relic hunter zombies, having to use every single one of my lawnmowers and barely having anything left to deal with the final zombies. Day 28, I ran over this sunflower in my brand new car.
Look at that new car.
Day 29 is the second world that I had a little bit of trouble on, and lost the first, second, and third time as it introduces the Crystal Laser Death Skull zombies on top of Gargantuars in this wave. This isn't impossible for me to deal with, especially considering I can trick them into getting poisoned, but still, there isn't exactly all that much wiggle room for me, and that's once again reflected in the lawnmowers left over at the end of the successful round. Along with that, I absolutely need at least one plant food to deal with any Gargantuar. Day 30 looks intimidating at first because it's don't plan on 3 rows of mold colonies and it's got relic hunters jumping in all the time, but the solution was unsurprisingly just me spamming the crap out of poison gas, and just like that I'm going to prison for war crimes. Day 31 is a pre-picked plants day, and with the only thing left to do being to try and force Dr. Zomboss to make out with his flying boat, we were done with the lost city of Atlantic City. Now on to Far Future. So starting off in Far Future, I wasn't entirely certain how this was going to go, considering it has some of the tankiest zombies of all worlds in it. However, it also has the power tiles, which allow me to multicast plant food, which translated means I'm just going to put dust globbers on all of them, and then the entire map will look like a giant bomb testing site, which was largely fitting as seeing as how Day 4 was Survival Sun Bomb Sol, which additionally is a competent sun production for us. Or rather, at least any sun production for us. So, for no particular reason, I also decided that I was going to use Far Future to level up all the seeds I needed for both Shadow Peashooter and Gloomvine, and as we've learned throughout the series, both of which are rather competent shadow plants. Gloomvine especially helping out as it allows us to power up plants independent of Moonflower, allowing multiple dust globbers to basically turn an attack wave into a constant explosion. Day 8, Ultimate Battle Wave, Shadow Peashooter is a plant supremacist. Day 9, never have more than 15 plants. I could make up some crap about how this day was actually somewhat hard because Gloomvine for some reason, but I couldn't lie to you all, and Dust Globbers just ended up destroying everything. Day 10 to introduce the Disco Zombie Mechs, or the Disco Mech Zombies. Anyways, they summon a bunch of other zombies periodically, but I didn't really have any trouble with either of them, as I nuked them as soon as they spawned. Day 11, plan your defense, but it gives me enough to create 2 whole rows of Dust Globber, Eversplosion, Gloomvines, so that's what we did, and in record time, the wave was no more. Day 12, big wave, lots of mechs, some of them are Gargs, and it does get pretty close towards the end with me losing most of my mowers, but thankfully Nightshade once again clutches by being our only current silver bullet for Gargantuars. Day 13 introduced the Football Mech Zombie, though in response I introduced it to the Dust Globber Eversplosion.
You need closure. Closure? The explosion hasn't even ended yet!
Day 14, spend no more than 1,500 sun. I would tell you what Shadow Peashooter's response to that was, but it contained a comical amount of words that would prompt an FBI investigation. Day 15, protect 3 endangered annoying orange death cannons, and we can actually give them a slight range of protection using Gloomvines on them, which additionally allowed them to repel pretty much all threats with their combined plant food. All in all, this day was easy, largely just because Gloomvine and annoying orange synergized. Day 16, conveyor belt. Gloomvine also knows what you did, but it suspiciously approves of it. Day 17, pre-picked plants. Gloomvine also wants to join you, and they seemingly won't take no for an answer. Day 18, produce 5,000 sun. You already know what we did. We made an entire power grid and spam Moonflowers in it. Also, I realized just how overpowered Shadow Peashooters are when powered, and just like that, we were done in no time. Day 19, survive while sun bombs drop. Oh, I'm sorry, you mean here's an excuse to make more Dust Globber Eversplosions to finish the entire mission without even having to turn my brain on, sure thing. And then we get to day 20 where things finally get real. So, it wasn't that bad, largely just because this mission notoriously has imps that just make a break for the lawnmowers, and you can only half expect Starfruit to deal with them. Not too big of a deal considering the second time I failed was just due to me not being quick on the draw, but we get it the third time by utilizing both Gloomvines and Dust Globbers, and bada boom, it's done. Day 21, produce 5,000 sun and don't have more than 16 plants. I failed instantly the first time because I forbore I needed Moonflower. The second time around I just half honeycombed it, and then Gloomvine plant food did the Moonflowers so it would additionally spit out sun when it destroyed everything around it. Technically not the first try, but the solution wasn't that difficult to come to. Day 22, plan your defense. It did admittedly get pretty close towards the end without the help of Gloomvine, but not close enough as we were able to barely weasel out at the end. Day 23, no more than 15 plants, and don't spend more than 2,250 sun. The armor is a significant issue when we don't have our forces powered, but Dust Globbers, Eversplosions, Eversplooge inside the Evermechs, Evermechahedrons.
Those aren't even words.
Day 24 was another sun bombs, and, well, I don't know what else to say, it was easy. I haven't really been using the sun bombs to destroy zombies, but I did for a few here, but it wasn't even remotely close, and after bombing them, I might get shipped back to Rimworld for war crimes. And with day 25 being to debate Zomboss about insect supremacy and how it's just factually correct, we were done with Far Future. And starting out in the Dark Ages, unfortunately, unlike with parasites and summoners, the entire world is completely undoable without Moonflower, as there's no proper shadow plant shooter who can take out the tombstones. Even if I gave Nightshade a plant food, I wouldn't be able to get one before until after it was too late. Fortunately, the Moonflower, in its obnoxious randomness, is actually plenty of challenge for this world. On top of Moonflower only giving sun whenever Moonflower damn well pleases, Moonflower's sun production also scales with how powered it is, with its lowest form being only 25 sun. Meaning for most worlds, I'll be sweating to make enough sun to protect myself in the beginning. It's not too much of a challenge once I get started, as you'll soon find out, but it's interesting seeing how these shadow plants are able to tackle and overcome various obstacles while struggling with others. Day 4 was a conveyor belt, poo-poo, doo-doo, butthead, fart, triple dog dare something about lions. Day 5 had a comical amount of buttheads, which helped me... Day 5 had a comical amount of bucket heads, which helped me realize that this was the absolute perfect time to get Shadow Peashooter and Gloomvine, or at least just Gloomvine, so that we can have some actually proper AoE to deal with this onslaught. Day 6, plan your defense and defeat the zombies. Shadow Peashooter proceeded to hurl an obnoxious amount of very offensive wording towards the zombies while their kids were watching too. Day 7 read pretty much the same as the opening days. We struggle with opening sun production, but once we get going, the day is already won, bada boom, moving on. Day 8 survived with the given plan. Some of the Shadow Peashooter's insults were directed at the zombies' kids. Day 9 survived with evil potions, causing zombies to become much stronger and faster, and generally more dangerous. Fortunately, I have a bit of evil potions of my own, and after a few tries, we successfully out-warcrimed the zombies again. Day 10 wasn't the ultimate battle wave because it doesn't exist, but it did exist at one point, and it wasn't just all in our heads. Just like the being beyond the veil, the one who watches. I know you've seen it. Whether you saw it in the woods, whether you heard something behind you, or whether you're watching this alone right now and you're in the dark and you heard something move in the corner. But you can't bring yourself to look now because what if it actually is there? And furthermore, it knows that you can see it and may drop the facade entirely. Remember, there's a biological reason why humans are programmed to be afraid of things that look human but aren't. Anyways, day 11 was more or less the same. We get 2 rows of Shadow Peashooters after some time, and after that, nothing can stop us. Day 12 introduces one of the more unique days of the entire Plants vs. Zombies 2 campaign, being to guard a column of puff shrooms, but since puff shrooms disappear over time, you have to keep plant fooding them throughout the wave in order to make sure they don't disappear. Not a particularly challenging day, but interesting nonetheless. Day 13, another conveyor belt level. I already made a high-effort joke for this episode. Just pretend I made another meme here. Day 14 produced 5,000 sun, but it locks us to only using Sunbeam and Sungraves. It's already confirmed you can't get the sun requirement out of the graves alone, so it becomes a, are my weapons competent enough to defend? And as you've seen this whole time, that they are. In other words, this day doesn't really count. Day 15, plan your defense, and it introduces wizard zombies who can obviously turn plants into harmless sheep. Fortunately, they aren't as fast of a draw as the Shadow Peashooter railguns, so we are largely pretty safe. Easy day moving on. Day 16, another Shadow Peashooter railgun, nothing of importance happens, no difficulty, moving on. Day 17 was another evil potions fall, and it was a pretty good fight, and went on for quite a while, the fight itself not being very difficult, mainly due to my Shadow Peashooter McGloomvine Gooner time, but I do actually enjoy the potion gimmick levels, and am kinda disappointed the Dark Ages campaign is so much shorter than the others. Day 18 was the pre-picked plants wave, and then we get to day 19, which so far has been the second closest day to ending the challenge, as we have the task of protecting 3 magnet shrooms. However, they're relatively close to the right side of the map, and more importantly, I'm stuck with Moonflower, who on top of initially giving very weak sun, only really gives sun when Moonflower wants, meaning we're more or less at the complete mercy of Moonflower of whether or not we have enough time to protect the magnet shrooms. And Moonflowers are actually even worse than that, because when plant fooded, it doesn't pulse several times like other sun producers, rather it just released one burst of sun, whatever its current power value is, meaning you could potentially be dropping a plant food for as little as 1 sun. Additionally, there's a slight level of mathematical worth to determine here, and that comes with figuring out how many Moonflowers I can make before I have to defend. I can save 1 magnet shroom early on with an early lawnmower launch, but other than that, 3 of them then come at once, so it's largely going to be down to Shadow Shroom and Nightshade to get them. And I'm not gonna lie, I did come pretty close to having to bust out an emergency plan that I had planned might work if everything else had failed. I was gonna do a whole cliffhanger for it for part 4, but ultimately, in the end, it ended up not coming to that, and I finally got one lucky round with an early burst, and it was enough for us to make up all the money we needed, and then the rest of the round went really well, and we finally made it past day 19. And with the only thing left to do was to flirt with Dr. Zomboss's dragon girlfriend in front of him until he throws a chair at me, we were done with the Dark Ages. But I decided to call it here, as we have made some great progress through the worlds, and could probably finish things off in the next 2 episodes, given we're still able to come up with solutions to everything. But if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more like it, please leave me a comment down below letting me know your thoughts, as well as what you'd like to see next, both Plants vs. Zombies and otherwise. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing, as I upload new long-form content every week, as well as new shorts most every day encapsulating variety content, including challenges, guides, memes, audience participation, playthroughs, and even theories. Also, join the Discord with the link in the description, as well as the pinned comment to become part of the show. But with that being said, thank you all again so much for watching, and big thank you to my channel and Patreon members, and I will see you all next time.